I heard Muhammad Ali talk about being humble. He said, I tried to be humble. Y'all didn't listen to me when I drove a little car, stayed in a little house. It wasn't until I started talking braggadociously and wearing diamonds and things, that's when people listen. And you have to recognize that, like, for as humble in spirit as I am, people really look at me and listen a lot better when I got 8 pounds of gold on my neck.
Right.
Because they know I'm not fucking playing.
Yeah.
That's
Hello, you're watching NME. I'm Jordan Bassett, and we're here with the brilliant Killer Mike.
John, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we're here to talk about Michael, your amazing latest record.
Thank you.
I think probably the only way to describe it is to call it a magnum opus. That's the phrase, right? Because it's an absolutely massive record. You're talking about really big themes. You're talking about family. You're talking about race. You're talking about masculinity. Sonically, it's kind of like a potted history of Atlantan hip-hop. And yet at the same time, it's a very intimate record as well. The clue's in the title. You're talking about your life. You're talking about your journey. It's kind of a coming-of-age story. And I'm wondering why now was the time for Michael? Because, of course, a lot of people will know you as one half of Run the Jewels with LP. Yeah. It's been just over 10 years since your last solo record.
Yeah.
So why now?
Because I realized this is 20 years in the game and people have met the persona of Michael. They've met Killer Mike,
right,
who was named Killer Mike in a rap battle at 16,
right,
who is the product of a 9-year-old's daydream of being an MC. And they met me in proxy to Outkast. They've known me in proxy to my kinship and friendship with people like T.I. and making music, and they've known me as one half of one of the greatest rap groups ever, Run the Jewels. But they hadn't met Michael. And with COVID happening and with me getting incredibly sick for 2 weeks before they even named it COVID.
No way.
Yeah, and seeing people leave too soon, I was like, what a shame it'd be for me to die. And then people get introduced to me. So while I'm here, let me give opportunity for people to know, fully who I am.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, the record came out in summer. What kind of responses have you had when you've met people on the street, when you met fans at shows?
There's no place that I go that working class men of all races, creeds, colors, and ethnicity, and the women who love them, that I don't get recognized and this record doesn't get acknowledged. I was in a barbershop before I came here. And before I left, a customer who hadn't got his haircut came up, asked for a picture and said, man, that Michael album is absolutely incredible.
No way.
And it speaks to people in a way that I wanted it to. It shows a commonality amongst the worker class, even though it's race specific, because I'm talking about me as this little black boy growing up in this black enclave in Atlanta, in this country where I'm very much a minority, but in my city, I'm not a minority. In my city, I'm the majority. In my city, opportunity abounded, and I don't come from the same story that you hear a lot of rappers or hip hoppers come from, where they felt second class, they felt put aside, they felt not seen. I felt seen. I never felt second class, and if I was critiqued or criticized, it was usually by someone who looked like me, who wanted me to do better. So It gave me an opportunity to present a different narrative of a black man. It gave me an opportunity to present hip hop in a way that August Wilson's plays, Fences, or Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God, or James Baldwin's speeches would affect me. It gave me an opportunity to show the working class in a dignified manner. It gave me an opportunity to show addiction in a way that showed empathy, and the addicts weren't just used and abused. It gave me an opportunity to make peace with the fact that my mother and grandmother are gone. And so many women, including the mothers of my children, have poured into me. And the expectations from our community is to do great things. So it gave me an opportunity to say thank you and to hopefully have done something to reward all that was poured into me.
What you're talking about there is quite specific, right? But you're in a barbershop in London and a guy comes up to you. So what do you think is the universality that is connected? Just the pure honesty of the record? The
pure honesty of it. And the working class is not radically different. You're perceived as a white man, I'm perceived as a black man. But if we grow up, whether it is the working class in London or the working class in America, we grow up with similar issues and problems. We grow up with similar joys and triumphs. And I think that commonality is what brings us together. I think that people are listening to a rapper talk to regular people about his regular life and upbringing. And there's an extraordinarism in regularity. There's something extraordinary about my grandfather getting up at 5 a.m. every morning and eating an English style breakfast. I didn't know we were eating an English style breakfast. I just thought my grandpa liked beans in the morning. And his grandson goes on to become a world famous rapper and travels to the United Kingdom to see that the food that he ate 2-3 times a week shares a commonality with the worker class here. Because why were you eating beans and 3 different proteins for breakfast? Because you're going to go work 10, 12 hours a day in a field or on a truck or welding or doing something. So it made me feel a greater kinship to the working class here. So for me, I just want people to understand that in telling my story, I didn't understand at first that I was going to be telling all our stories, but I understand now. And I have a greater responsibility to keep making music that leans into the direction of the common man and woman.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally true. It's, you know, there's obviously Dave Chappelle's monologue in Run, where and he's talking about specifically the experience of being a black man in America.
Yes.
And he says, you know, it's just like being
storming the beaches of Normandy.
Right, and that brought me to tears the first time I heard that, and it still does. And I'll be honest, I've got very limited experience of what he's talking about there, but like it speaks to you, you know.
It does. Yeah, I mean, I brought the tears to this record still. A lot of people feigned outrage because Dave said that. But what he said made the most sense in the world. The 18-year-old boys that were storming the beach of Normandy, they had no idea of what the grand global political scape and scope that brought them there. They thought they were fighting for freedom and patriotism, and they were. But honestly, it is always the proletariat that dies in wars. It's never rich men's sons. Yeah. It's never the monarchs that die in war. It's us. It's our children that die in war. And hence, even on the streets, if you're a minority or you're a class that is not cared about, you don't understand why your friends die from senseless. In London, it's stabbings. In America, shootings. It may not make sense that my friend Zeke is dead or Boonk is dead, and I'm here. Zeke and Boonk are gone. The only remnants of their life that remain that's not with their mothers or grandmothers or sisters is my song, is me and Sleepy talking about and keeping that memory alive. And you don't make sense of it. I can't tell you why Boonk didn't survive the drug game and somehow I did. I can't tell you why Zeke didn't survive young Wildem and I did. But my goal while I'm here is to keep running, to keep making sure that their name lives on in all the peaks and valleys that I go. And that's what I'm called to do. So Dave's monologue, for those people that were offended, I'm going to say, just take some time and peep the point of view that none of us really understand why us. Yeah. None of us understand why we swam stronger and faster than those other sperm, but we're here. And since you're here, make something of the life while you're here. Yeah,
I saw your show in London the other night.
What'd you think?
It was an amazing show. You had your choir.
Yeah, Midnight Revival. Man.
It was beautiful.
Thank you.
And when you talked there, you sort of touched upon what you were talking about earlier, your relationship with the UK, and you said when you first came to the UK, you felt sort of embraced.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a bit more about that?
You guys have a love for soul music here and what they call vanilla soul. But, you know, whether it's my mom introducing me to Culture Club and Sade, you know, my mom loved Wham and George Michael. My wife loves Adele. You know what I mean? There is a strong love of music here that still feels pure in a way like it did when I first discovered music as a child. Wow. You know, people come to live shows and are enthused. And you still have that in America too, but when you have so much of something, sometimes you can take it for granted. Right. And when you can so easily access entertainers and athletes and what feels like stardom because you have a certain amount of internet and IG followers or something, you can take for granted the artistry of it. And it feels like here that there's still a deep appreciation for the artistry. And I like being here.
There was a kind of religiosity to it in some way. Yeah. So could you talk about what sort of space you're occupying when you put on a show like that with the choir, and you kind of, it was almost like being a preacher or something.
Yeah, I mean, God's in the building. And you know, my grandmother would say to me, and you know, I'm glad I'm wearing shades because sometimes I tear when I think about it. But you know, she told me you can't keep running from the Lord. And I can remember being a child, being a young boy, and people would tell my grandmother he's anointed. And in a Pentecostal tradition, that means that God has shown favor on you. You have a mission or a purpose. And I ran for years from my purpose. You know, man, I was having fun. I was all the same shit I do now, but I didn't accept my purpose. And now that I've accepted purpose, I realized that God doesn't want me in a church, you know, dressed up every Sunday telling people that they're going to go to hell. God wants me the same place he wanted Jesus, in the streets, ministering to people, letting people know that in spite of addiction, in spite of your circumstance, in spite of what others may say about you, you perceive as higher, you're loved and you're to be revered. And you are just as important as any creation or creature God has made. So in a lot of ways, I have to accept the fact that I am a preacher. And I've never wanted to accept that because, you know, the other shit is so fun. But what I've learned is that God doesn't want me to be anything other than Michael.
So this realization, this emerged around the time that you were making this record? Yeah. And was it maybe like a COVID thing because you were more introspective during that time?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I got to sit still. I got to be home. I hadn't been home. We'd been on the road 7 years at that point. You know, one of my children is waiting a kidney transplant, gave me an opportunity to be with him more. Right. Got a chance. The three oldest children had been on the road essentially their whole lives, gave me an opportunity to just be at home, to enjoy. And my aunt is 88 years old. She still walks a mile a day. She still moves around with her great-great-grandchildren. I got a chance to hang out with her, to see and be with my sisters, to smoke weed with my friends from high school and college, and to be back home, to really be back home, and to really finally have to accept what my grandmother would say. Like, you can't keep running from God. God laid me on my face. After we shot Ooh La La and came home, I went to my friend's dad's funeral, who I thought his dad looked as healthy and as great as my dad. His dad all of a sudden died. I go to his dad's funeral, and it brings me to the point that I have to accept that just like my mother had died, one day my father's, I have two dads. Both of my dads are going to be gone. So give your father some time. It gave me time to understand I'm going to be a dad. So as I'm sick and I'm laying there and I'm literally feeling like this could be it. And my wife, who I convinced to drop out of nursing school years ago, thank God she got enough nursing school to nurse me back to health. And after I came out of that, I just said, I can't live another year without putting the testimony down. And me and my A&R cuz Lightyear, we locked in the studio. And for the next year and a half, we just worked our ass off, put 39 songs together, called Dion, No ID, who I'd been friends with forever, and finally said, I'm ready to do the album with you. Can I bring it out? Flew the album out, let him hear it. And he said, this is what we're going to do. And man, from that year to the next year and a half, we spent perfecting this record. Yeah.
I mean, it's such a distinctive sounding record. Yeah. It's a very gospel influence.
Absolutely, that's purposeful.
It sounds to me. So could you talk about like the sort of story you're telling sonically and which influences you're drawing from with this record?
So there are characters in this record, and you're going to see them pop up in the future, but the main character, besides the 9-year-old boy on the cover, Michael, the mischievous little lad with the horns and the halo, is Atlanta. Yes. Atlanta as a character. So Rico Wade of the Dungeon family, his voice serves as the voice of Atlanta. Whether he's talking about a young girl being pregnant before time and her having to make the hard decision, or whether he's introducing saying, it hasn't been hard, it's just been a journey. Journeys have ups and downs. Also characters in there. When you hear me talk about my high school sweetheart, who I loved, who I've got pregnant, we had to have an abortion. You're not going to forget that when you hear me talk about my wife and comparing her to Coretta Scott King and Betty Shabazz, and Winnie Mandela. That strikes a particular emotion out of you. It gives you a particular picture. It's a movie on audio, and so it's a movie with soundtrack, it's a movie with soundscape, it's a movie with characters, and it's meant for you to play, and it's meant for you to play in long form, to press play and just let it go. And I want you to close your eyes, or if you're cleaning up, but I want your conscious mind to be gone. Right. It's like when Maya Angelou would write, she would say she put jigsaw puzzles and stuff around her so she could let her conscious mind do something so her subconscious mind could really come out. Oh, really? And this album is meant for that. It's meant for you to close your eyes to, or do something so your subconscious mind can really hear it, can really start to visualize it. And, I wanted people to know people that I know that they hadn't known. Everyone knows an addict. There's an addict in every family. Some of us are the addicts in our family. But rap music had never done a good job at showing sympathy and giving empathy to addicts. We've never done a great job. And perhaps we couldn't. We were so caught up in the mire of the drug war. We were so caught up in being petty hustlers or major figures or wanting to be aspirationally. You know, everyone wants to be the winner. No one wants to be the loser. But man, a lot of times people in life lose. So it gave me an opportunity to introduce you to the addict in a different way. You know, when you look at High and Holy, you know, and I pay homage not only to the men of my community, but to the women they've had children by. That's my honor to pay you respect, and the same respect to all your baby mamas. That's not something that you commonly hear in rap, but that's something that I commonly see in my community. Yeah. You know, I see women that'll be like, oh, that's what's his name's wife. How you doing? You know, and I wanted a chance to show the Black community in an uplifted way, because we are. We're dignified people. We are a God-fearing people. We are embracers of love and joy, and through all our pain and all the petulance we've faced, we've done it with the dignity and with the grace. And I wanted this album to show that. And sonically, I wanted you to feel that. I wanted you to, every record, start with a record, go through a conflict or a peak or a valley, and come to a conclusion at the end. It's almost like a scene in a movie, and then it sets you up for the next scene. It's no mistake that Something for Junkie leads you directly into Motherless. My mother suffered from addiction. She was my greatest hero, my greatest champion, and she couldn't defeat the fact that she was so deeply sensitive as a human being that she had to use drugs to numb that, because otherwise she would have just been an open sore that the world constantly hurt, you know? So I needed to bring people into my world, and sonically I knew if the music felt like it was cohesive and supposed to be together, that it'd be easier for people to suspend disbelief or shut out whatever was going on and focus in. So all of that was purposeful, and I'm glad you got it.
But you know, I'm thinking when you're talking about your mother, you're talking about, as you mentioned, teenage pregnancy, abortion. This is very visceral stuff, right? So, you know, did you have any reticence about putting that out into the world?
I've been wanting to do it for so long. It was almost therapeutic. I started seeing a therapist too, a Black woman who really understood, you know, my conflicts, my concerns, my cares, and who helped me get into a place where I was comfortable just telling it all. Like, I've always given people clues to me that there's a sinner and a saint, you know. Yeah. But this was the first time I said, well, this is who he is in full. And I was nervous about how people would take it. Yeah. But what I found out is that more people have those halos and horns. Right. And they were finally glad to hear that someone say that I'm both. I don't have to, from an ideological standpoint, pick a side and point at the other side and say you're wrong.
You know, you mentioned at the show the other night that you saw Michael as part of the extended Run the Jewels universe.
It is, absolutely it is, absolutely.
So, how does that relationship work then?
Well, if you're a comic book reader, you've heard about the Uncanny X-Men. So I read that comic book. I have two dads, a bio and a non-bio dad. And my bio dad, of course, was a police officer. My biological father was a police officer earlier in my life. My non-bio dad had been a steel worker and a truck driver, but he never let the kid in him die. He still collects Hot Wheels and comic books and trading cards. So that was something he encouraged. And when we would go to this little shoddy comic book store that used to be in the West End, that's on the western side of Atlanta, that's all Black enclave. And my dad, before he went and bought his Playboys that I would sneak and read later, we'd buy comic books together. And I still remember when he bought me my first issue of Uncanny X-Men. I was just amazed that there were so many different types of mutants, and no one looked alike. No one's powers were the same. And there wasn't just one character. My character within the Run the Jewels universe is Killer Mike. He's a swaggering, badass motherfucker. You know, he talks about his mom as though she was a wicked, you know, queen over a fucking, you know, just ruling the streets. And you get a chance to meet her, the real person, because you get behind the Wolverine mask and you get to Logan. You get to the human being that is Michael. So when you hear me make, you know, Mom, I heard that your mom was a murderous queen, you get a chance to hear that fanciful little boy interpretation of her as a man that just misses his mother. That misses her so deeply he wears her every day, and her mother around his neck, and he prays and meditates every morning and prays that her energy is out there and feels and heals, you know. So I just needed the Run the Jewels fans to know that because this record looks, feels, smells, tastes, sounds, and is intrinsically Black, that it doesn't exclude you. It's just the prequel story to the character you get as Killer Mike. You get to meet the 9-year-old boy that created that character and the world that created him.
You said it's part of a trilogy.
Yes, yeah, we're going
Was
to do
that,
three.
was that straight up, or I
No, it's
wasn't
going
sure
to be a
if you were-
trilogy. Yeah, I do one for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Wow. Okay. So what? We're going to have to wait another 10 years, or
Yeah,
what?
I would like to be around another 10 years. You know, I still think I'm handsome. I still got my hairline, so I'd like to be here. You know?
But as in, the follow up won't be.
No, it's not. I'm
really
not going.
soon.
No, I'm not going to wait 10 years. I'll be back to work in about 60 days.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I want to march in the Grammys and march out with a trophy or two. We'll
Yes.
see how that goes. But no matter what happens, I'll be back to work before the end of the year.
So because the Grammys is sort of
February.
It's for consideration at the moment, right?
Yeah. I think the 10th that the official nominations come out on the 10th.
And because I thought it was great. I saw that you put on Instagram that you sort of explained why you thought
Absolutely.
Michael deserved that
Absolutely.
accolade, and I
Absolutely.
totally agree with you. I thought it was very cool that you just kind of put that out there and said it. It kind of makes you vulnerable in some way. To say
Yeah, I'm not
that.
going to lie and act like I don't want it or I'm above it or I just do it for the art. I would like for my art to be recognized. You know, Van Gogh was so amazing, such an amazing artist, and you know, you hope that his energy understands is recognized, but he died. He died unrecognized. You know, it's I don't want to die unrecognized. And somewhere in the South, there's a little boy or a little girl that's lyrically a motherfucking monster. I don't want them to think that they don't stand a chance because of that. I don't want a learned child to think that they don't stand a chance because they're learned. I don't want them to be ashamed to be vulnerable or be intelligent, you know, or to move with grace and dignity. And the only way that happens is, you know, I heard Muhammad Ali talk about being humble. He said, you know, I tried to be humble. Y'all didn't listen to me when I drove a little car, stayed in a little house. It wasn't until I started talking braggadociously and wearing diamonds and things. That's when people listen. And you have to recognize that, like, you know, for as humble in spirit as I am, people really look at me and listen a lot better when I got 8 pounds of gold on my neck.
Right.
Because they know I'm not fucking playing.
Yeah.
So I like an opportunity to have those trophies. I'll never forget what Lauren made Black girls and girls across the board feel with the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and seeing her with those armful of Grammys, whether she cares about those Grammys anymore or not, at that moment, it meant everything to us as fans because a true MC got validated.
Yes.
I didn't give a fuck if she was a man or a woman. I was just like, that's us.
Yes.
And I would like for the people that have supported me for 20 years, supported me and Run the Jewels for the last 10 years, I like to give them that feeling. So whether it's one trophy, 3 or 4, I would like for my audience to get an opportunity to say, that's us.
You know, it's interesting you talked about that you recognize that people listen when you speak, and you sort of, that's why you wanted to put yourself in that position on stage with that sort of like almost preacher type persona.
Yeah.
But you've talked about how the Dave Chappelle monologue emerged because he was urging you to go into politics.
Yeah,
and you said, I can't go into politics because I like staying out till 5 a.m.
Yeah, for at 5 a.m. strip clubs, marijuana. I'm usually with my wife. And he said that's exactly why you should run. Because we're not asking for you to be perfect. We're asking you to just be truthful and be a leader. And I've had to come to the acceptance that I am.
So does that mean that you may now decide to do that, to try to go into politics?
That means whether I've never not been in politics since 5 years old. My grandmother, you know, had me work Andy Young's campaign. There's never been an election I have not voted. There has not been a local election in which I have not helped a candidate. So I don't know another way to do it, because when I asked my grandmother, why are we doing this? She looks at me and said, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be involved in things that affect you on a hyper local level. So federally, I don't care to get in the shouting contest over who's going to be the president of the United States, but I care who's going to be my prosecutor and my judge, who sits on my school board, who's going to be my mayor. I care that I have a relationship with the governor of my state, that we don't share the same political party. We don't share all the same ideology, but what we do share is a commonality in wanting what's best for our state. We share a commonality in wanting the prisoner that gets released from jail not to aid to the recidivism rate by going back to prison. So, you know, when I push him or urge him to do things that are for trades, and a year later he pops up and he reinstates the HOPE program, the HOPE scholarship that gives people scholarships not only to college but trade school, I understand that my relationship is an important one. Because even though there's some people that don't wish to engage him on the behalf of my community, I'm required to do so because God hasn't given me this intelligence for nothing. God hasn't given me my grandmother who gave me an innate political understanding for nothing. You've given these talents and these blessings for a reason, and they're not just selfish reasons for your own material profit or gain. And I speak for a greater community, so I'm required to do that by what I've been trained to do and what I've been encouraged to do my whole life.
But what about running for office in somewhere?
I'm gonna get rich as fuck, so no one can bribe me.
Right. Okay.
And then I'll run for office.
That's like the safeguard, right? I see. Yeah. Okay.
Bernie Sanders, I remember Bernie, the OG. I visited him in Washington when there was a session going on, and he said that politics has just become fundraising. That political parties simply want you to come up, do your meeting, leave, and go raise money for the party. And that's not what he got in politics for. And I agree with him on that.
So you think maybe you can actually just be more effective by being a community leader?
I've always thought that. I've always thought that that's the effect is in being a king maker, you know. But I've come to realize that my wife says, she says, whenever you sit down, she's like, whenever you choose to not do music as a full-time job, she said, you're going to get pissed enough to run for office. Because I sit there and I yell at the TV like my grandfather. Right?
So you just need more time at home and then it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so.
You mentioned earlier 10 years of Run the Jewels, and
yeah.
you guys did a bunch of shows
to
celebrate that. How did that feel to do those shows?
Amazing. Well, it was hard as fuck getting ready for them because we had to remember 56 songs.
So you were playing songs from each album. You were kind of
No, we did each album, the whole album.
Is that right?
So
okay.
every we did 4 nights in 4 different cities, like a residency. So we did New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. And each night you did a whole album. So if your album is only 40 minutes, you do 40 minutes of that album, and then you just do a mix or a medley from the other 3 albums.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's. How do you feel to go back to this stuff and think about the legacy that you've built in the last decade?
Man, I did a lot of prayer and thanking God because, while you're in the middle of the gunfight, you don't think about all the bullets that missed you, right. And so, you look up and you're like, God damn, Ben has hair now. That's my publicist out there, y'all. When I started, he just had a regular, short crop, and now he has full hair. I'm just like, we've known each other a decade. Yeah. And we've built a relationship and a brotherhood, and we've built a bond with the community of people we call the Jewel Runners. So I'm just thankful. I'm just full of gratitude.
I know that you mentioned last year that you guys were working on some new stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes like Elle had brought something through my the hotel I stayed in Los Angeles. There was a studio there, so he brought something through. He played it. I just jumped on it, and it's dope. But it works like usually Elle will go off, work on beats for months or whatever, come back and with a loaded playlist of 10 or 15 records, like, hey, this is what I have. What can we do? And then I'll go in, listen, and I'll just start rapping on different things. And I'm just waiting on the call. So, it's on. We'll see. Because he's the producer part. So, you know what I'm saying? The heavy lifting in terms of the music is on him. So whenever he feels inspired, I'm here. And until he feels inspired, I gotta rap, so I'll be back rapping.
So he's just got to put out the bat signal, and then
that's it. That's all I'm waiting on. When the bat signal comes, I'm there. You know what I mean?
What is it about can you sum up in a nutshell what it is about your relationship that works so well?
Well, it's just meant to be. I can't no more tell you why I married my wife compared to the dozen other beautiful women that I had known, made love to, had children by even. I can't tell you. My sisters, was just like my mother was brown and had these beautiful ambered eyes, and I'd always loved brown girls with ambered eyes and curly hair and shit, and everyone, thought that that's what he was going to end up with. But man, I sure loved the redhead with freckles. And there was one who went to a church I went to, I just stare at her. It's the only reason I went to fucking church, going to that church. And just when I thought I had it all figured out, I met a black girl who was born with red hair and freckles, and I just was enamored by her, and I ended up convincing her to marry me at 3 a.m, high off drugs in Vegas one night. And we didn't tell anybody. We were married for 9 years, and we just tramped around the world together, and they thought that it was a rapper and this fun girl, and we had built a serious, committed relationship. And me and Ella like that. I can't tell you why we work. I just know peanut butter and jelly go together.
That's amazing. Okay, so last question. What would you ultimately like people to take from Michael?
I don't know if I want you to take anything. I want you to keep it with you. I'd like for you to keep the hope that's in this album with you. I'd like you to keep the trials and the triumphs with you. because as you endure your own, I just want you to know you're not alone. And I hope that this generational statement, this art that's from the heart, I just hope it pierces your heart and it becomes a part of you.
Mike, thank you very much.
I appreciate you, brother.
To you.
Love.